Hello, welcome. Welcome to week 2 of your concurrent U.S. History honors. Okay, I am Mrs. Hall. Hope you're having a good week. This is just our quick overview video for the week. For week 2, I'll go over the assignments. I'll walk you through some parts of the assignments, go over some of the review questions, make sure you're clear on the assessment and what's due for this week. If you need any additional help or clarifications or things like that, remember I'm available on Wednesdays from 4 to 5 in a live Google Meet in case you can drop in. It's optional, but you can drop in. I can give you assistance if you find you're behind or not understanding a concept. I can help you. Also, feel free to reach out anytime via email or things like that. All right. So let's jump into this week's. I just wanted to point your attention to the announcements. Okay. Each week on Mondays, I will post what to do for the week, so it's for this week, we're doing Module 1, Lesson 1, Foundations of U.S. Constitution. 3 parts to that. There's a checking for understanding. I'll walk you through that. You answer questions in your notebook as you go through the lesson, and I'll show you kind of a little bit of toggling back and forth between that. I won't do the notebook with you, but again, that's where you could come to the Google Meet on Wednesdays if you have questions or if you need that additional assistance. And then your quiz or assessment that you have at the end. So a short quiz, and I have set that up for 2 attempts. Okay, so you get that reassessment attempt. It will keep the higher of the 2. All right. Just a quick review. Last week you had that civic life module discussion. It's at the very beginning of Module 1. So if you didn't get that done last week, please get that in. And stuff because it is late. So get it in so we can get it to replace your grade of 0. All right. And stuff because that definitely would hurt your grade not having that in. Okay. All right. So let's get into modules. Now remember, every week I will be posting on this weekly live session instructions. I have last week's, this week's. So you can see last week's. It lists what was due and my instructional video for that week. Go to the next. So here's this week's. Again, what's due, what's past due, so trying to just keep you on track when I'm available and stuff. And then I will post this video I'm doing right here. It'll be posted right here, lesson instructions. Okay. And I'll do that for each week. So again, depending on when you complete work, you can reference those. Okay. So week 1, you were supposed to do the civic life module overview discussion. And then for this week, we are in Lesson 1, Foundations of U.S. Constitution. So basically this whole first Module 1, Lesson 1, okay? And you can see there are 3 due dates. So they're checking for understanding, which is some multiple choice questions that check your knowledge or interpretation of the material. Nice thing about this is you can redo it. So if you don't get it right, you can redo it. And hint, a lot of these questions actually pop up on the quiz. So it's a great way to review for your quiz because they're pulled from the same test bank. Okay, so it's a little hint for you, working smarter and get that better grade. Okay, your notebook will be submitted here, and then this is where your assessment is. Okay, you can see for next week, we have the same thing, 3 things that are due. All right, so we're going to start on the first page, the notebook page. You're going to want to open your notebook and have it ready because as you go through the pages in Canvas, right, then you're going to be completing your notebook. Now, you will do this independently. I'll just kind of overview it really quick, kind of where to find things, get you started. And then that's where if you have additional questions or need support, you are welcome to come to the Wednesday 4 to 5 meet or email me. If that time doesn't work, I can try to find another time. I would just need some notice so we could work out our schedules, okay? Or you can email me the question if you need to. All right, so you're gonna click on that open, make a copy. Now, once it's open, there's 3 things you're always going to want to do whenever you do a Google document within Canvas so that you'll submit it correctly. All right. I like to take out the copy of, so I like to just rename it a little bit. That's up to you. Okay. You're going to want to save it to your drive. And this is where I would create a U.S. history folder. So I would do new U.S. history. Okay. You can click check mark and move here. All right. And that way, any document that you do for this course, you just save it to that U.S. history. Honestly, I'd have a folder for all of my classes, right? And that's a way to keep yourself organized. So make sure you save it on the drive. And then I would do share. And you need to do anyone with the link. Okay. Anyone with the link. And that's so that when you submit the link, it's if I can open it and actually grade it. All right. If you don't do that, then it's going to say access denied. I'm going to have to message you. You're annoyed. I'm annoyed. And it slows up that whole process. Okay. So just make sure it's shareable right off the bat. Okay. So once you have this open, you're ready to get started. And we're going to keep this open. And then we're going to toggle back and forth between this and our Canvas pages. So let's go back over into Canvas. All right. So it gives us the overview. Okay, we're going to analyze multiple resources and examine their contributions toward the United States Constitution, develop a claim and analyze the success of diverse ideologies that influence the Constitution. So basically the struggle to write the Constitution, right? There were two attempts. There was the Articles of Confederation, the first Constitution that was written, which gave too much power to the states. And so they had to, originally they just wanted to modify it, but they had to rewrite the entire thing and stuff for the actual Constitution that we have today so that the central federal government had more power than the states. The problem in the Articles of Confederation, states had too many powers. And when you have 13 states arguing with each other, somebody has to be in charge. Somebody has to make decisions. If we have warfare, things like that, like things have to get done. So the power structure just didn't work in the first Articles of Confederation, so the Constitution. So this lesson is kind of focusing on that process from one to the other, how it happened and the influences. So we're going to go through each tab. We're going to look at the introduction tab, okay? Watch this crash course. So maybe pause this video if you want to use this video to kind of walk you through. Pause this video, watch this video.
Hi, I'm John Green.
It's 13 minutes, does a really good job of an overview of the lesson. So honestly, if you're someone who kind of hates reading and stuff like that, this is really going to help you out. Take some notes on this, and it can definitely help you out as you're prepping for your quiz and doing things. Okay, so watch this. Then we're going to find our first thing here. How has the success of other government structures influenced the creation of the American government? So you're going to highlight it, Control C, okay, or you can right click and copy. And you're going to go over into your notebook, and this is where the supporting question goes. So Control V, or you can right click, paste. All right, so that's where you'll find your supporting question. So that's kind of the overarching question for the lesson. We go back over into Canvas, and we're going to go to lesson vocab. So if you look at the notebook, you'll see lesson vocab. So literally as you go through each tab and page in Canvas, then you'll complete a section of the notebook. And this is kind of the routine that you'll do each week or with each lesson before you take your assessment. Okay, so there's context clue, which is using the vocab in a sentence, and then there's you putting it in your own words. Okay, so if we go back over into Canvas, okay, it's going to give you the context clue. So your first one is precedent. Okay, so Great Britain had never adopted a formal written constitution. They largely developed their laws as judges made decisions based on precedent. So that you could use as your context clue. So you could literally take this and put it here, okay, in your context clue, and then in your own words, redefining precedents. So maybe an example could be precedents. So basing current decisions on previous decisions. So basing current decisions on previous decisions and examples. That's an example. Okay, so context clue goes here, which you can pull directly from the lesson. Context clue goes here, which you can pull directly from the PowerPoint. And you can put it right here. And then you can put your version of the definition, just kind of rewording it. How would you say it in layman's terms or modern terms? All right, so you do that for all 5. Okay, so we have precedent, legitimacy, sufficient, predecessor, and tyranny. So if you want, you can pause this video, and again, you can go and complete that section. I am going to continue on. These videos are meant to just kind of be an overview, give you instruction, give you example, and hopefully clarify any questions. All right, so you can pause if you want and do those 6, or you can come, or those 5, sorry, or you can come back to it after this video. Okay, we're going to go to next. And on this page, then you're going to see several concepts. So natural rights, British influence, Enlightenment influence, and establishment of American government. So this is really going to be the heart of the lesson and what will take you some time. So let's go back to concept. Okay, concept, natural rights. So if you look at your notebook, okay, you'll see natural rights. So there are 2 questions you're going to answer from that section. What are natural rights and why are they significant? Sorry, it's trying to close the meet on me. Nope, not yet. Okay, so first question was, what are natural rights and why are they significant? Second, write a claim that defends the need for natural rights in our government. I'm fine with, I would say 2 sentences or so each. So these don't need to be a paragraph, 2 to 3 sentences answering the question will definitely suffice for me. On the page where you submit this, and I'll go over that in just in a minute, there's a rubric. So if you ever want to see the point value for each parts of this, there is a rubrics on each submission page, okay, and stuff. But I'm fine with, in these sections, responding to direct questions, 2 to 3 sentences, okay? So again, reading through this section, natural rights, how they were laid out in the Declaration of Independence. Here's an example of the ones that were pulled. Now, there are many ideas of natural rights and stuff from different enlightened thinkers, but the ones that we really zero in on, that we see Thomas Jefferson really zero in on, are life, liberty, pursuit of property, which come from John Locke, right? He believes in that social contract. And Thomas Jefferson changed it from that to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. This way, we're not literally promising every single person that comes to the United States or is born in the United States a piece of property. That gets, think over time, the property sizes are going to shrink. But pursuit of happiness is the idea of you can pursue what makes you happy. So if that's owning property, if that's a business, if that's going to school, if that's traveling around without a job, living in a tent, like you really, the sky's the limit. As simple as you want to be or as extravagant as you want to be. So having the opportunity, not necessarily the guarantee. The onus is on you, but the restrictions will be lifted where you can pursue what you would like, is the intention of that. Okay, so you can look at Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, their reference to that. All right, the next one then is about British influence. So same thing, if you look at the next section, British influence, there's two questions that are going to basically ask you to look at the history of Britain, because the colonists were British citizens. So they had a history of some representative government. Yes, they were ruled under a monarch, but they also had Parliament, House of Lords, House of Commons. So they weren't new to this democracy idea. They just wanted to take it to the next level. Okay, so think it like democracy was like at a 5 and they wanted to take it to a 10. All right, so they very much took influence from their British roots and experience as British citizens, both what they liked and what didn't work, to improve upon. All right. One of the first examples of a constitution is the Magna Carta. This was written in 1215 in Britain. And so it says what parts of the Magna Carta were influential in the creation of the American government. We definitely see this with taxation representation. We see this with like judicial system, freedom, things like that. Number 2, what parts of the English Bill of Rights have become part of the American structure of government? So these 2 sentences, or these 2 questions, I like to review them before I go into the section. So we have British influence. You can look at common law, okay, and what influences we see evident in the American government or formation of the American government, history of the Magna Carta, English Bill of Rights. So here you go, English Bill of Rights down here, lays out petition of the government, readiness of grievances. If you have a major problem, that way the government is doing things, you can ask the government to address this. We have this definitely right in our ability to protest and our ability to speak up, freedom of speech. So another one, look down here. Finally, in the Bill of Rights, we have the right to bear arms. In the English Bill of Rights, we get the right to bear arms, right to a jury trial, protection from cruel and unusual punishment. So these are definitely influences that, again, the colonists, Thomas Jefferson, Adams, so many others took from these earlier English documents and wrote upon them or improved upon them. Okay, because there were a lot of things that worked, just not everything. And a lot of the problem was that the British government wasn't following the things that they were supposed to do. Okay. All right. Let's look at the next section. So enlightened influence. What do you think? Why do you think so much was borrowed from the Enlightenment era? So remember, the Enlightenment era was a social movement in the 1700s. It was a social movement to question the authority of government, divine right? That just because I'm born into a monarchy position doesn't mean I should automatically have the right to tell you, who is maybe born middle class or lower class, what you should do with your life. That in just your natural state, there is value of life. Okay. Then it's going to say, identify 5 keys to the founders took from Rome, Athens, or Enlightenment, and explain their purpose. So concept, and then the founder's purpose for the concept. So where does it come from? And what is the purpose, or how was it applied? All right, so let's look at this in Canvas. Enlightened influencers, John Locke. So I would watch this short video clip. All right, that can be really helpful. And stuff. So it goes into enlightened thinkers, okay? And then think back to those Romans, those Greeks. There's references of Romans here in the 2nd paragraph. Let's see, where are the Greeks? Greeks. Athens right here in the first, okay, in the first. So going back to Aristotle and Athens, and the very first example of a democracy where people have direct vote was in Athens. Then the Romans took it to the next level and did indirect, right? They had senators that would represent each province of the Roman Empire. And then we see a long break in that. And then the British take it to the next level with the Magna Carta and Parliament and basically a constitutional monarchy. So where a monarch has rights, but is subject to law. All right. And they can't just do whatever they want. They also have to follow the law. And then the colonists in the Americas, who were British citizens, taking it to the next level and saying, we're going to have no monarch at all. The entire structure of our government will be based on those rulers and leaders coming from the people. So no divine right. And everyone is subject to law under the Constitution. Okay. Let's look at this next section. Establishing American government. What about the Articles of Confederation do you think was unsuccessful? So remember, the Articles of Confederation was the first attempt at a constitution. And it was in place for several years, but it didn't work because it gave too much power to the states and not enough to the federal government. They didn't have the ability to declare war, to collect taxes, to raise an army. And so they had to rewrite it. Originally, they wanted to revise it, and then they just kind of had to throw it out and start over and rewrite it to find a new balance where, yes, the states have rights, but when we have so many different states, somebody has to be in charge. So ultimately, the federal government does have to supersede the states. Okay, now it doesn't mean states don't have rights. And sometimes when the federal government oversteps, the states can push back. But in general, if the federal government's going to say something, that has to be applied across the states to create continuity and stability within your government. You can't just have everyone going their own way. That creates a lot of instability. So we go to the Learn section. Okay, the establishment of talks about the Articles of Confederation. Okay, it was apparent almost immediately. It contained some defects. So find some of those defects. I summarized a few. Answer that first question. And then the second question was, how did the founders find balance in the creation of the new Constitution? So down here, finding what things did they change in order to make it so that the federal government had more balance. It's a fine line because you don't want them to have too much power. You don't want another British situation, right? Where they're just directive to you and the states have no rights, okay? So it was this fine line of giving power to the federal government, but also making sure that states had rights, okay? And representation in the decision-making. Okay. The next section is going to be the primary source, okay? Now, before we get to that, they're going to have a checking for understanding, and that checking for understanding is going to be based on the first parts of the lesson, okay? That history, the Enlightenment, Articles of Confederation, Constitution, all right? So this is for a grade. The cool thing about this, like I mentioned, is that you can do this to review for your quiz, though, and you can retake it as many times as you need, so there's no reason you shouldn't get 100% on it, okay? So you're going to click on that link, and it's going to open up and it's going to take you to this. And there's basically going to be a series of questions and it'll tell you, how many attempts you've had. But again, whatever your high score is, that will register in the grade book. So this is an easy way to get a perfect score, but also to review for your quiz. All right. So if you get it wrong, redo it till you get to the right answer and study these questions, because these are, again, questions that are in the test bank that you could very well see. For sure, see some of them, if not a lot of them, on your quiz. All right. So let's go over some of these. Why is the social contract important in the Enlightenment view of government? All right. So it represents the idea that people, the government, give consent to their government to lead and manage their society. Let's check it. Yay, we got it right. Okay. So you do that, you click through, takes you to the next one. According to John Locke, what is the core purpose of government? Okay. And that is to protect people's natural rights. Check. Yay. Next. The Articles of Confederation is probably best described as, all right, an effective document by which birth is strong national government, the Constitution that required too much sacrifice in state governments, a document that valued the national government over, or a Constitution that valued states' rights over national government. So that's definitely going to be states' rights over national governments. It was a great first attempt, but the problem again with it was that it gave too much rights to the states. And then it's like having 13 little independent teenagers or something like that. No offense to teenagers, but somebody has to be the adult, right? Somebody has to be the adult. So the federal government has to step in. And so there were a lot of problems with it off the bat. The American system of government is outlined in the U.S. Constitution, seeks to promote and protect social contract by providing for the power of judicial review over laws and actions, limiting the president to only 2 terms, provides the means by which vetoes or limiting government power by separating power into different branches and creating checks and balances. So it's definitely going to be that. Sorry, my throat is really dry. Read the excerpt from the Constitutional Convention, 1787. According to the resolution, the purpose of the convention was to, establish common trade, revise the existing articles, establish a process by which states could leave the Union, or ratify a new constitution. So their original goal was to revise the Articles of Confederation. And then it quickly became kind of obvious that this wasn't going to work. They just kind of had to scrap and start over. Sometimes you can revise something. Sometimes you just kind of have to restart it. The framers of the new Constitution generally agreed that only a loose, united federal government could retain sufficient flexibility. The Articles of Confederation had already been effective and should serve the model. Retaining unanimous agreement over policies was the key, or the new government should have to increase the authority to effectively rule. There definitely was this agreement that we're going to have to increase the power of the federal government, but we got to do it in a way where it can't railroad us and actually take away our rights. So how do we give them enough power to rule and protect us while also protecting our natural rights that were taken advantage of by the British, and not have a British 2.0 situation? What was one of the weaknesses faced in the new government under the Articles of Confederation? It required approval of all 13 states to amend or adjust. It lacked legal authority to make war on foreign nations. It could not regulate national trade, or it provided no federal court system. So I believe this one was the war. Yeah. Okay. Now it was actually several things. It was not inability to declare war, inability to collect taxes, and inability to raise an army, to actually protect. What if 7 of the states agreed and the other 6 didn't? There was no way to make the states fall in line when the decision was made. So it was every state for themselves, which wasn't going to work in a unified country. If you're going to have independent countries, okay, but then we're more like Europe, right? If we're actually trying to be unified, then that can't be the case. You can't have states just doing whatever they want. Reading this excerpt from the Virginia Declaration of Rights, what does this passage affirm was the core of government? All right. So where does this passage affirm the core of government? So it's going to be in 3. This government is or ought to be instituted on the common benefit, protection, and security of the people, national, and community. Okay, so it's going to be section 3. All right, we're getting there. From this excerpt on the Constitutional Convention, according to the resolution, which of the following was responsible for organizing this convention? And that's going to be the exiting Congress. Okay, so basically they saw that the Articles of Confederation wasn't working, and the people leaving Congress were kind of saying, hey, this has to be revisited. We've got to make some changes here because this is not working. We can't govern effectively. Reading this excerpt from the Virginia Declaration of Rights, according to the Declaration, where does the power of the government originate? Okay, so let's see. All men are equal through independent and inherited rights of which they entered into their state of society and cannot be contracted, deprived. All power is vested. All right, so it looks like inherent rights. So enjoy liberty. So the people themselves. Let's see what they say. Yep, there we go. All right, so once we've answered it, we're going to submit it. Okay, now if you didn't get it correct or something like that, you can retry. And again, you can redo this, or even if you're doing this and then you want to review again before you do your quiz, this is a great idea because again, these are questions that could be pulled straight from the test. Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to go to our next page. This is then where you'll see your primary source, okay? And the primary source will change each week or with each lesson. And this one is the Declaration of Independence, okay? So there's our opening, so when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary to dissolve the bands. This is the most famous breakup letter ever. This is a letter to King George, right? Saying you've done all these things. They list all the grievances. There's over just under 30. It's almost like a subpoena, like you're being charged. Okay. So therefore, right, here is what we're going to do. And then all the people that sign. Now, obviously I'm oversimplifying this, but just giving an overview. So you'll read through this document or use this document then to fill out the table. So for title, you could seriously just put Declaration of Independence, 1776. Concept or unit, you can use the concept or unit that we're in right now, which is the U.S. Constitution, right? This isn't the Declaration of Independence isn't the Constitution, but it sparked that, right? It was one of our founding documents that starts to define the direction that the Constitution is going to go into, those unalienable rights, life, liberty, and property, or pursuit of happiness, right? That all men are created equal. Now, we know originally that it didn't actually mean all men, it meant free white men, right? It didn't include women. It didn't include immigrants, minority groups, people of color, right? It didn't include that. But over time, we've seen through amendments like the 13th, 15th, 16th, 19th Amendment, and so on that definition broadened to actually mean all people, right? That no matter what your background, your gender, your race, your identity, your preferences, your religion, anything like that, your orientation, that you should be equal, okay? As long as you're following the law, doing what you're supposed to do, you should be equal. Okay, so unique features. You could talk about how it gives the list of grievances, maybe count how many. Find a vocab word or something that you aren't familiar with. Now, what is this about? You are supposed to give 3 different summaries. So what I would do is I would maybe break up the document into sections. So for example, maybe summarize the intro paragraph, okay? What does he talk about right here in the beginning? When in the course of human events, okay? What is summarized here? Then maybe give some examples of some of the accusations toward King George, cutting off trade, imposing taxes, not getting their right to a trial by jury. So being denied some of the rights as British citizens that they're supposed to have. And then what is this last section about? We therefore, like, what does this mean? Okay, we will levy war, all right? So what does that mean? And then bring it all together as just summary, which for that, you can basically just put the Declaration of Independence is the official breakup letter with Britain. It's officially saying we are breaking away, this territory is breaking away, which you have to remember, this was treason. They were the most powerful empire in the world. The British in the 1700s, no one could compare to them militarily. The colonies they had, I mean, they were at the height of imperialism. Okay, so if you think back to your world history lessons, this was the height of imperialism. So to pick a fight, you're a bunch of colonists who are farmers, shopkeepers, bookkeepers, educated, but not soldiers, to pick a fight with the biggest, baddest army in the world. This was a death sentence, but this was definitely our founding document and a very fiery breakup letter. All right, so in these last 2 sections, let's go back over to here, sorry, in Canvas. Okay, so use that for the declaration, for the primary source. Journal, okay, it's going to kind of wrap things up. You're going to answer the question, does the Declaration of Independence make an argument for colonial independence from Great Britain? I think it's safe to say the answer is yes. Now you're just going to have to explain why or how, right? And stuff. So write 1 or 2 paragraphs. I'm fine with 1 paragraph, but that would mean 5 sentences. Okay, so when it says 1 to 2 paragraphs, I'm fine with 1 paragraph, but that means minimum 5 really good sentences. This is an honors class, so I don't want short, stubby sentences. You need to be clear. That does not mean copying and pasting. That means in your own words. Okay, so 1 paragraph works, 5 sentences. And then the review. Okay, this last section is going to basically take those 5 vocab words you did in part 2. All right, context clues. And it's going to have you just work with them and match them. All right. And you can do it until you get it right. And again, sometimes there are vocab questions on the quiz. So another thing I would do prepping for your assessments is review these vocab words. All right. And again, you can redo it as many times as you need. Okay. Summary, last section. How does the success of other government structures influence the creation of the American government? So you could talk about British history, Roman history. So kind of pulling from that section. That we see established of the government, Articles of Confederation, I think it was what? Oh, part 5, Enlightened Influences. Maybe looking at the Enlightenment, the Magna Carta, even maybe part 4, Magna Carta, English Bill of Rights. What evidence do we see? Because they didn't just start from scratch. They improved upon it, but they took, it's kind of like you don't reinvent the wheel. You kind of take what somebody else did and then you make it better. You make it better, okay? And again, 1 paragraph is fine, which would be 5 sentences. Okay. All right. So we're going to go to the next page. This is where you will submit it. Okay. So you'll submit it here. You can see the rubrics. It's worth 119 points. It's due this Friday. Okay. And then it shows you for each section. So just putting that essential question, 3 points, 15 points for the vocab, 12 points for those, the concept, British influence, 12 points as you go down. So the biggest points are going to be primary source and that journal. So you definitely don't want to skip those. Okay. Those are an opportunity to really get points, or it will reduce your score pretty quickly. All right. So you submit it here. Make sure again that your document is saved to your Google Drive, and make sure that it is shareable. Okay. So that anyone with the link, so get it off restricted and that way I can open it. Okay. It does close. I've given you a 2-week late window as long as I can till the end of the quarter. And stuff, I will not extend beyond that because technically we're supposed to give 1 week. Okay. So I'm already extending to accommodate you. All right. So I'm already extending to accommodate. So once it closes, it is closed. And this is an honors class. Okay. So again, staying on top of this, staying on track each week, and stuff really needs to be your habit. Okay. So you'll find your assessment on the last page. Okay. I've set it up for 2 attempts. Okay, it's worth 20 points. You get 15 minutes. It keeps the highest of the 2 scores. And again, I've kept it open for 2 weeks instead of 1. Okay, so it's due this Friday, but once it closes, it is closed. Okay, because I've already been generous. We're supposed to give 1 week, and I'm giving you that extra time. All right, so that's what I have for you. That's the overview of the week. So just to recap, for this week, week 2, you'll be able to find the playback right here. Make sure you're checking those live session instructions every week. Here's what's due this week. You have the checking for understanding, which you can redo as many times as you need. And those questions often show up on the quiz. So another great way to review. If you take the quiz once and you don't do well, go back and maybe look at those again because they could be similar questions. And there's a test bank, so you'll get different questions each time you take it. They won't be the exact same questions. Here's where you submit your notebook. And remember, you use all these tabs as you go through the notebook, and then the quiz is right here, and it's an assessment of this lesson. So the notebook and the checking for understanding, and you get 2 attempts. It'll keep the highest of the 2. All right. Hope you have a great week. Again, if you need anything, come see me on Wednesdays. If for any reason that ever changes, I will post in the announcements ahead of time if I have to switch it because of, I am a full-time teacher, just like your full-time student. So I teach also during the day. I have 2 kids. So sometimes things come up, but for the most part, my goal is to keep very consistent on Wednesdays. All right. Thank you so much. And I would love to meet you. So if you want to just drop in and introduce yourself, I would also love that. Okay. Thank you so much. Bye.